welcome to the SmaxTalk podcast episode. After week 7, we are here to go over our top 20 lists. It's finally time. The top 20 players across all of the lists that we received over the course of the past week and a half or so, all been compiled alongside my list. And I've also got with me tonight Insekiro and Malstixy with their lists too. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing
I am
great.
well. I am
I'm right.
well. It is raining down here in Canada, but I am well now that I'm doing it with you two.
So it's a windy day here in Los Angeles. I'm
Oh.
ready to flame Insekiro's list.
Yeah.
That is the identity of this podcast. Flame Insekiro's list for this episode.
Yeah, and
Trash analyst.
speaking of Insekiro's list, you can follow along with his list and all of the other ones as well by clicking the link to the document that's going to be in the description down below. So you are definitely going to want to have that open while listening. It is a tandem thing where you view that while listening to us. We're not going to have the graphics on the video, unfortunately. So if you're listening on your phone, maybe you are going to want to look at the list first because that's what we're going to be talking about. So on the document, once you do have that open, you'll see on the far left you've got our total list, which is going to be a compilation of everyone's stats together, where they placed the players. And then as you go along, you can see everyone else's list, myself, Mouse and Sekiro, and everyone else who sent one in. However, there's also going to be another tab where you can look at the math and how it was all compiled. Effectively, every person who, so for instance, Griffin is my number one, and also Mastixi and Sekiro, so he gets a 1 from all of us. Some people have him a little bit lower, so it just takes the average and puts them all together. And for people who don't have a certain player on their list, that just gets a 25 to round it out at the bottom and still have an average together. So that it's not skewed or anything. But now that all the logistics are out of the way, let's get into the actual substance of the list. The top 20 total list here for the winter split of 2020. We've got Griffin at the top. He is the statistical best player in the league based on all of our opinions. All of us agree as well.
Yeah, I think honestly, it's not too much of a shocker to hear uh, people who've watched all the games say that Griffin, not all of the games, but the majority of games, especially of Griffin, especially as me and Insecure were in the Thursday division, so we saw the most of it, I guess. So when you're thinking about the best player, it's very easy to call out Griffin because LCG is not the same team, not even close
Right.
without him.
Yeah, I think he's just a very like mechanically gifted player, and just playing against him twice, he's just like the first time Prodigy played against him, he like smacked Daddy Dust and just like played like an insane early game, just like camping bot lane. And then the second game was like it was like a little bit closer, but like he kind of 1v9 that second game too, and he'd be always be places where like I would not expect him to be at any given time, but I guess he just has that like just massive brain game sense, and just seeing all of his games, like especially after this week, I know like Stixie flamed my list for putting him a lot lower than I originally did. But after this week, I think he convinced me like he's just like the top jungler in the league right now. I don't see how many junglers 1v9ing a game on Rek'Sai
Yeah.
getting 20 plus kills. So
And that is why he is at our top spot across all of our lists. Of course, other people do have him a little bit lower than that, but he is averaged out at our number 1 spot for good reason. Like these gentlemen are mentioning here, he is just so consistently the 1v9 player on this team. He got them first seed basically just on his back. They were carried to first seed against all odds against Aether, who was in sole possession of that one for a really long time across the length of the split. But Griffin, he won that tiebreak situation against them to get the first seed, and was very convincing at that too. Mostly just his performance. So yeah, really
you're
really
welcome,
exciting
Griffin.
player to watch as well. So yeah, nothing but good things to say about Griffin. He's 13 as well. You always mention that he is literally a child, and he is already just smacking everyone in the jungle. So Griffin is our number 1 player. But we also have our number 2 that we are all aligned with. We got Coronavirus from Akuma Katana's the top laner. and we all have him at number 2.
Yeah, kind of similar to what we said for Griffin. He's just one of the most dominant players, and not only his division, but the entire league overall. And only one other top laner that we'll get to later comes even relatively close to him. But even then, I still think, but by watching his gameplay, that the way that not only does his team play around him, and but the way he plays around his own team and what he brings to his own team is massive, and it just simply cannot be understated.
Yeah, I think he's just like a rock in the top lane. Like there's no other top laner in that division, and I think in this league that just like can contest him. He builds his own leads, and he just like knows how to snowball massively with his leads, and then obviously that really helps Katanas in playing around him and further like creating that snowball for them to win the game. So he's definitely just like always pretty much an avenue to play around.
Right. And the meta suits him so incredibly well too.
Yeah.
He's definitely the best set that we have seen, and that champion is essentially the pinnacle of damage carry in that role right now. He doesn't even really play the Ornn all that much because he plays everything that's good against it, and he'll just destroy you with it. Feels like he gets a solo kill in every single one of his games. So
Not only do I think he's one of the better sets, I do think that he's also one of the better Aatroxes, and that makes him super scary. And he does
right.
have those
Yeah.
champion picks that if you're not going to try to play the set or Ornn against him, that he can play stuff like his Kled,
Mhm.
or in past seasons he's been known for his Renekton at times, right? So I do think that he has more that he's willing to that he could show, and I do think that just simply no top laner can match him, right?
Yep.
Especially with the not the fall, but with the now absence of Poppy Chulo, and I don't think any top player can come even.
Yep.
Yeah, and any playoff team that's gonna be up against Kuba Katanas is the top side is definitely going to struggle. I feel.
It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be really tough. I think we all agree that this is likely the favorite to win the entire tournament, and is because of players like Coronavirus. But speaking of Akuma Katana's players, uh, Malstixi and I have
Here we go.
Doubtful at number 3,
Here we go.
and Sekiro here has Doubtful at 11.
Whoa!
So you now have to
Whoa!
defend
How'd that
yourself,
happen?
Sekiro. Why is
Not only
Bishan
the
in Doubtful's spot, and why is Doubtful at 11?
um, I don't know. So just putting it out there now, so I can, I guess, well, not defend myself from the flame, but I went off of like 2 weeks worth of like highlights and like match reports and like I don't know, doubtful. I mean, he's good. Like he's a good jungler, right? He like Akuma Katana does well with him. He plays around his laners really well. I didn't think that he was just like a super standout player for his team. And like I could be wrong. It could be me just not watching enough games. But personally, I think I put Bishan in number 3 because I've liked what I've seen out of Bishan. He always just seems to be everywhere for Go Next. Like whenever a play's happening, he's usually always there. Whether that's like a gank or a counter gank, or just if whenever something's happening on screen, it just always seems like Bishan's there.
Yeah.
That's why I think I put Bishan as number 3. I've just seen him for a couple splits now, and I think he's been like pretty consistent. And like this split, he's still been pretty good. So
Right.
I think that's why I put Bishan as number 3. Doubtful, like putting him in 11, like might be is probably a little troll, and I'm going to get probably hard flamed by like all of Akuma for this. But like I personally like from what I saw, I didn't see him as like a super standout player. But obviously, I think he's like good enough to be in
Yeah.
the top
It
20 list.
we're debating of the top 3 junglers here, because we all do only have 3 junglers on our list. Not only that, but also we have the same 3 in Griffin, Doubtful, and Bishan. Same with the total list too. There are only 3 junglers on the list. They're all 3 in the top 4 in the total, which is pretty astounding. And no other junglers are on the list at all. So
Yeah.
it's
And
pretty
I
aligned
just
across all the lists as well. I think we're definitely talking about the top tier junglers in this league as a whole. The problem that I have, and the problem that Malstixi also has, is that Doubtful definitely is a standout player. He definitely is an all-star on this team all it takes is for you to see the games where he is funneled, of which there are many, many games. He plays the Olaf Yumi, he plays the Rengar Ivern, he plays all of this stuff, and he like hard carries on it every time. The first game that they played of the entire season was a Rengar Ivern game, and he gets a pentakill at like 19 minutes. That's the first game. That's their first impression. So, and it hasn't gone downhill from there either. I think Doubtful is a total all-star, and he definitely deserves my third spot and the total third spot as well.
That's fair.
Yeah, my main issue with how everything's kind of worked out was that I do definitely agree that Bishan is one of the top 3 junglers, but the way I view it is that you have Griffin at the peak of the pyramid, and then 1 to 2 steps down, you have Doubtful, and you can obviously argue how close or how far he is, right? And that's not really what we're arguing. I definitely do think that from there you have a couple steps before you even get to Bishan and what they do for their own team, because the way that they play, they warp the game to themselves. There is, if you've ever played against them or if you ever watch any of the games, they warp every champ select around those players, and Bishan just doesn't even come close to doing that impact. He does it on a lesser scale for sure, but not to that same intensity that I see from
You can
Griffin
definitely
and Doubtful.
feel when Griffin and Doubtful are in just the draft. I assume is what you're saying here, because
Yeah,
you will see Rengar bans against Doubtful. You will see Lee Sin bans against Griffin. In the game that they just recently played against Aether, Griffin got 5 champions banned against him. That's insane.
and he still did great.
And he still played Gragas, and he still smashed. I mean, he's number 1 for a reason. But yeah, I definitely agree that Doubtful, he warps the draft around him too, in a good way for Akuma Katanas. But yeah, the gameplay is definitely no slouch either. I think obviously based on where I have Bishan on my list, I think the gap is smaller than where you have him, Justin. But I think I think there definitely is a margin between Griffin Doubtful and then Bishan, but I do definitely I'm definitely aligned with Bishan being the star performer of Go Next. He's the one who's getting all of the plays started and finished for Go Next most often. And if you've heard their comms as well, you know that he's a shot caller too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's I think I'm not trying to like sell myself up, but like, oh, I didn't have enough time, but you know, I guess I had a small sample size that I worked with, and that sample size I guess I didn't
no,
make the list. I made the list off that, right?
Right, and in all fairness, I think your list is quite good. In my eyes, I think it is good. It's definitely there's definitely some bias based on like who you've played against, right? Because there's a lot of Fire Division teams, but Fire Division players, excuse me. But I mean, the Fire Division is the best division. So
Yeah, I think it even reflects it in the top and the total top 20.
Yeah,
which is just an aggregate of all the top 20 lists.
Over half of the top 10 is Fire.
Yes, not only is over half of the top 10, most like over a quarter of the list is Fire Division.
Over a third.
And over a third, actually, you're right. And we're saying that even from, and where we're also agreeing that I do think that Saturday is really propped up by Akuma Katana particularly, and we're not seeing basically any teams besides Akuma Katanas in the top 20.
Yeah.
In the total list, at least.
I agree.
From Saturday. So we're kind of saying like that our kind of overall predictions of the strengths of each division were actually pretty spot on with how we thought that Friday was the best. Then we have Ukuma Katanas, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Friday, Saturday.
Yeah. But yeah, we touched on Bishan here as well. Just looking at the total list here, number 5 is actually going to be Caliburn. And an interesting stat here, if you look at the math part of everything, or you just count it up on the lists yourself, there are only 3 players that have made appearances on every single list that we received. Those are Griffin, of course. Then we've got Bishan as well, and the third is actually Caliburn, Aether's bot laner. So I know that the 3 of us do not have him as number 5. We've got him lower than that. I believe Justin has him the lowest. Yeah, you've got him at 14. So Yeah, we've all got him pretty close, but not quite at 5. So my question to you guys is why do we think that this player is one of the 3 that are on every single list?
Well, I think to talk about them, you kind of have to talk about Aether in general. When you're talking about Aether, you have to first. Well, not only do you have to talk about Papichulo, who seems to be lower on a lot of people's lists. He's number 8th, I think, and
Yep.
on the overall list. But you also have to then talk about specifically the bot lane of Aether, who are great late game team fight carries, and they do absolutely fantastic doing with what they can do, despite sometimes most games they don't seem to be popping online.
Mm.
So I think that they're definitely standout. I definitely disagree with how high they are though.
I would definitely say that Caliburn himself doesn't have the strongest lane, but I think Curry does. I think Curry bridges the gap of laning phase to late game for Caliburn specifically a lot more than Papichulo does. Whereas Papichulo does it for the team holistically. I think for specifically Caliburn, Curry does that phenomenally well. And I agree with you that Caliburn is really good in the late game team fight scenarios. And he has often once his team gets to that point, he often is the one that's carrying them. But I think Curry and Papichulo, both of them, do a phenomenal job of getting the team to that spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had Curry higher on my list than Caliburn.
Yeah, I do too.
I didn't necessarily put Caliburn on my list for his laning phase. I did put him for his team fighting. I think he team fights with Aether really well. I think he positions really well, and I think especially for his Aphelios, I think he knew how to handle against the games I played against him and saw with him. I think his Aphelios kind of stood out to me. Just the way he managed his weapons, and he just kind of just always seemed to have like know which weapons to have in a team fight to use Moonlight Vigil on. Um, yeah, I definitely say Curry is like the better laner, I
Right.
guess for Caliburn, but I think Caliburn it definitely deserves like a high spot, I guess, on my list, just because he is such like that good team fighter, that good. He positions really well.
I actually feel bad because I don't actually have Curry on my list, and that's not because I don't think Curry is a good player. I'm really solid about what I think are my top 12 players, but
Mm,
I'm really shaky from there, and I just could not find a slot where I'm like, well, I think he could go here or here. You know what I mean?
mm,
And that's why I struggled with it. Maybe I'm looking at different things because than some people are, which it
yeah.
should be the case. But the I think that there's a lot of lists that are okay here, and I do think that Curry should be on it. I just don't know where I could put him on mine. For
Yeah,
example.
it's worth noting that in Sekiro and I both have Curry as our top support, and on the total list he is the top support by quite a wide margin as well. Um, so yeah, I definitely think that he is on there for a reason. He's a standout performer here. His laning is phenomenal. He plays the specifically his Thresh. I think is really good. Of course, if you're a
Yeah,
support player, your Thresh is probably really good. If you play that role,
yeah,
then you definitely do play Thresh because he's just so fun and he's been good for so long. But I think a lot of the supports that we're putting on this list are standout performers on that Thresh. Merc
mhm,
is also one. Jin is on some lists as well for his Thresh, I assume, and also Doctor. His Thresh is really good too. So
Hmm.
yeah,
yeah, I think we've got a lot of players that are very good at that champion, but the top of that spectrum is really Curry for me, just because he does warp that lane
yeah.
to being so favorable for this team a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think I agree with like Curry gets a lot of advantages for the bot lane just from his laning alone. And that's why I have him there. Like even just like recently playing against him, like he has landed like some insane thresh hooks like throughout the season, and even just playing against him, he hit some insane um, thresh hooks on myself in our most recent games. I remember we were team fighting in Midland. I TP'd in, and he hooked control through a set ultimate, which we were like puzzled about because we thought that wasn't supposed to go off. But then on top of that, I think he landed two more hooks while I was in mini form, and then like I died.
Yeah.
So and then I think there was a point in laning phase two where he hit like this insane hook on Penguin, and he thought it wasn't gonna hit.
Yeah.
So yeah, he definitely deserves like a lot of credit for his thresh. I think
Yep.
his thresh is insane. It's something to watch out for going into playoffs.
It almost kept them in that game against you. It was very
It did.
close.
It was good.
Yeah. Pretty
What else
crazy.
can I say?
Yep. But anyway, let's move on the total list here to Atinio, because we talked about Caliburn and Curry. Atinio making the list as the second best bot laner. I have him as first, and then I believe Darren, you've got him at 6, and
Got him
then
at the bottom,
Moustixi, yeah, you
actually.
you've got him at 2. I'm talking about bot laners.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah.
So I guess I'll give my side here, and then we'll go down the trajectory here. I have Atinio in my top 5. I think Atinio is I think he is the best bot laner in the whole league. I think his contrary to Aether's bot lane, I think Atinio is the one dictating the pace of that lane a lot of the time. Not to say that Merc isn't doing that, because like I mentioned, Merc's Thresh is also very, very good. There was one game in particular where Merc on the Thresh gets his team 3 kills in 3 minutes, and then the game is just over at that point because Merc just crushed it. But I think Atinio has a really, really solid lane as well. And he works together with Merc phenomenally well. And I think his team fighting, while I would probably say it is on par at best with Caliburn, because I think Caliburn is the premier team fighting AD in this league, I would say Atinio's team fighting is really, really good as well. And he gets there with his team very, very consistently. I think that this is a team that actually does win through bot lane, whereas Aether does not a lot of the time. At least not in the mid game to late. Maybe late game they do win through their bot lane, but most bot laners are going to be able to carry the game at that point. Atinio is usually the one getting advantages on his team with Merc come mid game even.
Yeah, I do. There's a reason I put him as my number 2 bot laner. Sorry, not bot laner, but AD carry on my list. And I do think that he definitely is one of the best AD carries in the league by far. And the way that he orchestrates the team around himself and the way that he orchestrates with his team is something I don't see a lot of ADs doing. A lot of ADs tend to be selfish and more caring for about what they're doing and stuff like that. Whereas when I not only do I watch Atinio or when I listen to him talk about the game, I think that he has a very unique perspective that really enables him to be the best be who he is right now. And I definitely think it's a good look. So
Yeah, I had a Tenyo at pretty much the bottom of my lists for
Still on the
80.
list though.
I think it's he's still on the list. I think he when I hear of like OTA glacials, I think Atenyo stands out as a solid 80 carry. I guess I just haven't watched enough games of him to just really have a good look on his skill. But I do think he's like a top 20 worthy player.
He's yeah, he's really, really
I think he's the
good.
rock. I think he's like one of the rocks for OTA glacials. So.
Yeah, I think that bot lane is that's definitely what they are. They're definitely the rock of that team because speaking of OTA Glacials, Axum, we both have him at 18. Axum kind of coin flips it sometimes. Sometimes he just pops off, like his set game that was his most recent performance on the stream. He just crushes it. Sometimes he's looking kind of like he's running it. And of course, there's also sometimes where his power line goes out, but that's another thing. um, I think Axum is really, really his highs are really high, uh, but Atinio and Merc, their highs are maybe they're not quite as high, but their lows are significantly higher than Axum's. So yeah, I definitely do think that this bot lane is the rock of that team, which is why I have Merc at number 7. I have Merc higher than both of you, and also higher than the total list by quite a bit for the total list. Um, I think like I said before with Atinio, I think Merc his laning is very good. I have him one step below Curry because I think Curry's laning is a little bit better. Uh, but mostly he looks better in lane because I think Caliburn is a significantly less good laner than Atinio. So there's kind of like a balancing act done there. But yeah, I think Merc is still a phenomenal support. I think the support pool in this tournament as a whole is really, really good. And I love to see that as a support player myself. I think the support pool has improved drastically from last split. And it's shown by all 4 of these players being on my list, whereas none of them were last time. And that's not just because they're new players. Forbidden and Merc were in the league last time. And they have both improved as players really, really tremendously. And also we've added Curry and Core Havoc too. So I'm very pleased with the support pool in this league.
Yeah. I so I'll defend my list a little bit here. So the reason I put Merc at number 10, he's ultimately my number 1 support, I think.
Yes, he is, yeah.
Yes, he is my number 1 support. The only reason why is I think that as the only reason I didn't move them, I'm separate them or move them apart is Tinu and Merc are a very established duo at this point.
Right.
They've been together for a while, and in my opinion, they should stay together in the standings. And I do think that they both elevate their own game. I do think that sometimes that one player, whether it's Tinu or Merc, can elevate their bot lane by themselves. But I think that their synergy together has been really proven, and that it's not one of a kind, but it's great.
Yep.
I think.
I agree. I only have them separated by one player, so I'm definitely aligned with you there.
Yeah, I don't have Merc on my list. I think it's
maybe he's
it's
your
tough.
21 though, right?
Maybe he's my 21. Again, I think if I was able to watch a lot more of the games, and I think I'd had a lot more time to like think out this list. Well, even then, like as unbiased as I tried to be with my list, obviously having the most fire division members in my list doesn't help. I think can't really help out without that bias, and obviously not being able to watch the games as much as I want to. I think
you're knocking yourself too much, man. You've got the same number of fire division players as the total list.
Yeah, but I definitely think, I don't know, like coming up with like this top 20 list was hard because there's a lot of players that you could justify putting on a top 20 list. I feel
I agree.
that like for some people will make the cut, but for others they just don't.
Yeah, the reason I wanted to add a bunch of people onto the list this time as opposed to just 3 like last split was because I wanted to see perspective from all the different players in the different division. We did get a really good spread. We have at least one list from each division, which I'm really, really happy about. So yeah, I'm glad your list is here. As much as you're saying like, oh, I didn't really catch too many of the games, I'm definitely biased towards Fire. I think it's still a good list.
Yeah, I don't think it's a horrible list either.
Okay, well that sounds a little bit passive aggressive.
It's not that bad, man.
Amateur analyst. By the way.
I'm an analyst supremacist.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
But anyway, getting back down a little bit, we're reaching about the 10 mark here for the total list. We are now approaching Papi Chulo territory. Disclaimer: some people did not want to put this player on the list because he's not eligible to play for playoffs, which is totally valid. He hit Master too early, which is unfortunate for Aether and Papi Chulo, but I still put him on my list because he did play all the games. As I'm sure that's why Justin put him on his list as well. But
yep,
if he's not on your list, that's totally valid, because he's not eligible to play. But like we were talking about with Aether before, they very often play through top lane, and it's because Papi Chulo is such an all-star for them there. Justin was alluding to it earlier with there's only one player that the two of us think can match Coronavirus, and he's not even in the league anymore. It's Papi Chulo. He's very, very good. He plays so many different champions here. His Mordekaiser is specifically the standout, and yeah, he warps the game around him in the game so often for Aether that I think even though he's not eligible, he still, for me, is still on my list at number 4.
Yeah, my he's also number 4 for my list, and he's the only player that even come close to matching the coronavirus. He's the only one, the closest to the vaccine. And to not have him at all on your list, nonetheless, not even in your top 5, is a gross misunderstanding about why he's such a good player.
Yeah, but yeah, I assume
definitely not me,
right? Definitely not you. Huh? Not you, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess since I just outed myself, and people will probably question me once they read the my list, I think Papi Chulo is a good player. Like, no disrespect, like, to Papi Chulo at all. I think he's a good player. I think I had high expectations of him as a player coming into the season, and I was definitely scared whenever Prodigy, like, the first time Prodigy was gonna face up against Aether, and I'm like, damn it, I have to face Papi Chulo in the top lane. And I faced him. And I actually wasn't, like, all that too, I guess, impressed with his gameplay against me, I guess. I'm not saying that, like, I can be as good as Papi Chulo, but I feel like I should have gotten like smashed a lot harder than I did with like matching up against Papi Chulo. And maybe I did. Like I obviously have CS deficits against him, but I feel like I should have just been like hard losing lane against Papi Chulo, and he just would have taken over top lane and just ran me down straight to my Nexus. At least that's what my thought of Papi Chulo was.
Yeah.
Especially just like with all the talk around him.
Right. It is
Not saying
fair, honestly, because your most recent impression of him was you beating him. So there is
yeah,
that.
but even then he was winning his lane, right? Like
Yeah.
so like again, no disrespect to him at all. I think he's also a good player, but again, kind of like my thing is he isn't in playoffs as well cuz he hit masters too early.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I didn't really put people who weren't eligible for playoffs in my list as well. And so I guess I kind of like solidified it. I tried. I just wasn't. I think my expectations of him were so high that I was actually kind of let down but what I ended up facing. That's just my personal kind of
I think it's a fair
experience
take.
with the Papi Chulo.
Yeah,
but I think he's an awesome top laner. Like, don't get me wrong.
My only problem with like not putting him any higher is that there's no other player that I think that has the same amount of impact as him that's not higher than him already. That like I have him at number 4 for example for those of you watching, right, for reference. And the even I was even considering that maybe he's over doubtful, but he's definitely not over Griffin and coronavirus. And there's just simply to me no other player that does besides coronavirus and Griffin.
I agree.
And doubtful as well.
I agree. Papi Chulo, you will be missed for playoffs. I'm hoping that Aether still puts up a fight here. I hope they get a top laner that is up to that level, but it's going to be really tough. Anyway.
F's in the chat, people.
Yeah, F in the chat for Papi Chulo. Let's get to the Akuma size pair here at the total list. We got X Fluke at number 9 and Indigo at number 10. I believe we all have them both. Am I right with that?
Yep.
I don't have X Fluke.
Oh, okay. List. So I guess that'll be the question first. Where is X Fluke on your
list? X Fluke is number 21.5, I guess.
He did only play 6 games.
Yeah, I didn't like the sample size I got from him was little small and wasn't all too impressive. And B, he also played Soraka mid, so
that
you go down a few numbers in my list if you do that. But no, I just felt like he didn't play enough games for me to justify putting him on my top 20. I guess
that's fair.
Personally,
yeah,
I'm fine with that. I will say that I am likely biased with putting him on at all with how few games he has played because of last split and also just knowing him myself. I think he is phenomenal in the mid lane. I think no one really comes close to him in the mid lane in the entire league, and I think that was definitely proven last split. And coming into this one, it was certainly true here too in the games that he did play. So yeah,
except the Soraka mid. We don't talk about that one.
I mean, that was his signature pick before too. Before it was really like a big thing, he was still playing Soraka. So
I'm just mad that they like first picked Soraka just to give it to X Fluke instead of Shaden.
Shaden did play a few games too, so
I'm salty. But when he faced us,
yeah.
Okay, they didn't give it to Shaden versus us. I was like, come on, like
because Shaden was scared he needed to beat you.
True.
Yeah, it's the number on the number 21 player on my list.
Yeah, I think X Fluke is very good.
Yeah, I think X-Look is so just disgusting with what he does. I think he brings a lot of stuff to the team, and I think it's very obvious when you watch pre. Obviously, this is meant as no flame to who ended up for Okada, who was on Akuma sides before, but the team looks 5 times better with him being on the mid lane, and it shows his presence in the game shows just by the way they play around him and the way they play.
Yeah, and that's why we both have him as our number one mid. Uh, yeah, he's pretty crazy. Of course, Mel Stixie, you've got him at number 5. I've got him at
Yep.
10, and he ended at 9 on the total list. But we can then move to Indigo. We've all got Indigo on our list. I've got him at 14. Justin's got him at 7, and Darren's got him at 8. And then
Ooh, so Smacks, you're the one that has to explain why you have him
I
so low.
have
Why is he
Indigo
so
low.
low, Schmax?
I am the one that has Indigo lower. So in terms of to give you a little bit more perspective, in terms of AD carry ranks, I've got him 4th, which is pretty low, because Justin's got him at 1 and Darren's got him at 3. So if you look at it that way, then you have to explain yourself, Mouse Dixie. But I'll go first.
Okay. And then,
So
okay.
I have Indigo only at 14, mostly because Akuma Sai's looked really, really shaky for a long time in this split, and I think that is a very rough look for a player like Indigo, who, when we were talking about Ateneo and Cruiser, or not Cruiser, we'll get to Cruiser later. Ateneo and Caliburn, excuse me, about how some players in the bot lane position are a little bit more selfish. I think Indigo is that. I think he does it the best of any of those kind of players, because he still is playing the meta. He's still contributing in a good way to draft, and he actually does do the most with that play style anyway. When you're looking at someone like Triple Lift, who does all of that poorly, Indigo is just a way better version of that, where he's actually picking good champions, he's playing the game well, and he's still a team player at the end of the day. But I think early on in the game, he doesn't contribute all that much, which isn't really his role, right? The AD carry's position isn't really supposed to do that. Like, to do more than that is to go above and beyond. Um, which I don't think that Indigo, that's where he does go above and beyond. I think he does go above and beyond in those clutch team fight situations, in the late game scenarios. I think that is where Indigo really does shine. But we're seeing a lot of the time, especially last split, where Doctor wouldn't even really stay in that lane a lot of the time, because Indigo is just a really good island player, and he can just hold his own like that, because he's just a player that will hold it down until he hits his power spikes, which is a very good attribute of an AD carry player. But um, I think that the attributes of Ateneo, of Cruiser, of Caliburn are a lot more standout in that role specifically, even though I think Indigo is a better specialist in that role.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
In
think
my opinion, the reason why I have him at number 1 is because I think that obviously I'm a little biased. I was on a team with Indigo,
Right.
so it's kind of hard to remove those feelings of bias. Kind of hard to test for it. Oh, it's not easy. It's easy to test for it, hard to remove it. So in my opinion, Indigo just does so much with what he's given. I He is so flexible as a player. I see him so willing to put in so much work to try to be able to play multiple different facets of the game. And even if it doesn't work out, he's not disheartened by it. And I have to give like a lot of props. Not only that, but I think that a lot of the wins Akuma Sites does get are on the back of Indigo carrying a team fight.
Mm.
And I think that if anything, that should raise. I don't think he's higher than where I have him. I think that's the highest I could relatively put him there. But yeah,
yeah, I agree with you on those points. I don't have him much lower than you. I only have him like a spot down from you. I think Indigo's been a pretty solid just like player overall for Akuma, and even playing against him last split. Like obviously he was a lot more standout last split, but this split I think I always thought he's been a great laner. Um, he team fights super well,
Right.
or is just that kind of player that you can depend on in team fights, as like demonstrated from this week. I didn't think that he was like super more standout than Caliburn or Kiwi to me. But I do think like he does his job as an AD carry to survive a lane, um, and then carry through the team fights through good positioning, you know, and stuff like that. So that's why I have him like pretty high up on my list. But like yeah, he's the third most AD carry to me. I have like Kiwi, Caliburn, and then Indigo like back to back to back
Yeah.
in 6, 7, 8. So I definitely think he's still like up there in terms of like 80 carries and like an overall player. But obviously not as standout, I guess, as I witnessed him last split.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that's gonna round out our top 10 here for the total list anyway. Let's hop down a little bit. We've got another Akuma player. Let's take all the other Akuma Katanas players in this conversation. So Klexo is hitting 11. Forbidden on the total is hitting 16, and June is the only Katanas member that is absent. That is a shared thing with Justin and I on our list. But we've got in Sekiro, you've got June at 10. So we'll start with there. Speaking of AD carries, you've got June just underneath Indigo and that clump of ADs. Um, I guess explain yourself.
So from what I saw, I guess I think June does his job well in Katanas. I think he's a good player. But I think if you just go down like the list of Katanas players, like he's not super standout, I guess, over the other AD carries that I've witnessed. And again, that might be it's probably obviously bias and just small sample size. But just from what I saw, like I think June does his job. I think
Yeah.
he is a good player. Um, but I don't think I could justify putting him above Indigo, Caliburn, or Kiwi. Um, just because I think the the Akuma Katana's roster is super stacked.
Yep.
Right? So being on a stacked roster for me, like I feel like if you aren't incredibly stand out with the already stacked roster, I think I put you a little bit further down on my list
Yeah.
than other players who were stand out to me. But I still think June is a top 10 for player for me for sure. He does his job, doesn't run it down,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
obviously
I
is
think
just
I think June is an amazing role player. Kind of on top of that, the problem is that you don't really make the top 20 player list by being a role player, and that's no flame to June because I think June's a great player. I think he's great at what he does, and I think he'd be a great aspect onto many teams that don't have that struggle because their AD doesn't play for the team, right? But the when I'm looking at top 20 players and I'm thinking about like is June really worth that spot? Obviously, like I have a little bit more information than some right. Being not only am I on was on Akuma, right, but I'm also friends with. At least I think I'm friends with him. um, so
gonna go check that out after
notice
this.
notice me, June.
notice me, June Senpai. Uh, and it's just to me, it's hard for me to put him on there when I'm already struggling so much to put other players, which I also think are good, namely like Laxon or June himself or Curry. You know what I mean? It's there's not enough slots for the list of good players I want because it feels like a top 20. Like I'm really glad that the top 20 list it seems like are we're all like, oh, these are all great players, right? Whereas
Yep.
I feel like in times where you're like, okay, who's actually a top 20 player, and you're like, well, like we have like a good top 13, and then like whatever the fuck 14 through 20 is.
Yeah. I think all of our lists, the entire 20 is completely like acceptable, which is really cool because I think there are a lot of good players in the league. And I think it'd obviously be tougher, but I could probably make a top 30 list and I'd be pretty confident with that too.
Oh, I
So
could as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really happy that we have that. But yeah, on the subject of June, I definitely agree with Darren here where this team is so coordinated and they're so ready to pull the trigger and so like dominant in their division too that the AD carry, whoever it is on this team, is not going to be the standout because that's not the AD carry's job. You're just pumping out damage. And if everyone's already dead by the time you can click them, then you're not going to do anything. Like playing bot lane for Akuma Katanas is probably the easiest thing in the whole world. And I know because I've subbed in for a scrim for this team playing bot lane. And I was still able to win the scrim on that team. So that's no flame to June. I think June is also really, really good. But yeah, it's just a really, really well suited team for that. And he is still popping off with the team. He's still doing it, but he's not the one starting it off, and he's not even really the one finishing it either. So that is why he is my lowest Katana's member. But we still have to talk about Klexo and Forbidden, who I believe we all have, both of them. So for Klexo, I've got him at 17, Justin's got him at 12, and Darren's got him at 4. So Darren,
I think a lot of people are going to flame me for who I have at number 11 if Klexo's number 12.
Probably.
I've just seen that now.
Well, a kid is not on the list, so we won't really go over that too much, but until we get to you. But
him.
Yeah, go over the 4 spot for Klexo, because I think Klexo is really good, but 4 is really high.
I took a look at some match reports, and match reports don't give everything, and like I saw the highlights of Akuma Katanas, and I think they have a really, really strong mid to top side.
Yeah.
And just I saw some of the numbers that Klexo was pulling out, and I was like, damn, this guy's good. So that's why I have him at number 4.
Yeah, I mean he's pretty crazy. He outfarms people on Ivern mid.
True.
Yeah, and he played Ivern mid. He played Ivern mid
Twice.
So,
yeah,
twice.
He outfarms people on Lulu mid too.
Yeah. So I think he's just crazy. Incredibly good. He puts out crazy numbers for the champion pool that he has, and just he plays super well with the team. Like Akuma Katana's, well, obviously all of the roster is like stacked, but like their mid to top side is just insane.
Yep, I agree. I really don't have too much to say. I think that it's very similar to June, where Klexo is usually the follow-up for this team, as it does work right now. So that's why I have him as the 4th player on the team. But he's still on my list. He's like you could make a case for having all 5 on the list, as Darren does. And yeah, they're just a ridiculous team. I don't know. I have nothing but good things to say about Akuma Katanas. So it all really applies to
my
him.
list because he played Yumi this week. So.
Well, he looked really good on Yumi.
Just kidding. I know.
Yeah, speaking of
but
Forbidden,
I just don't like the champion.
Speaking of Forbidden, he's also on all of our lists, and he's on the main list as well. I think he is. It's really similar. It's going to be rinse and repeat for Akuma Katanas. I think Forbidden is one of the 3 players that actually do get things started, which is why he's higher than the other 2. And I've also watched him play a couple splits now, and he's really come into his own here for this split. He was already doing that at the end of last split, which is why they did make a pretty deep playoff run. But he looks significantly better even now, and he's only improved since I started watching him. So yeah, I like Forbidden quite a bit.
Yeah. I think I originally had Forbidden lower in my list. But memes aside with the Yumi pick, I think he is a good support again. Like he's a really good rock with June in the bot lane, and I do appreciate a good Galio support player because there aren't many of those in this league. And I think for those who can pull it off, I think it's still pretty impressive for a support that's kind of like quote unquote fallen off out of the support meta. But like
you should check out my OPGG after this.
Right, I will. But I think it's really refreshing to see just like I guess the supports, like especially like just like players taking these picks that like we don't normally see like in the quote unquote meta.
Yeah, I agree. I'm really high on Forbidden. I'm really high on the rest of that roster too. But let's take it to our next clump here, which is the Soulbound duo. We've got Steel City Warrior and Core Havoc. Both of which are on my list, both of which are on Justin's list, and they are absent from Darren's list.
I actually want
mostly. Yeah, you go ahead.
I'm gonna. So on my list, I actually have Steel City Warrior at number 6.
That you do.
That is pretty high up
and
there.
that is not a hot take in my opinion.
I think you have the highest of any list.
Of any list. Wow, is that real? Wow, that's true, huh? Wow.
Let's look.
Does the math support it?
So Ryan also has him at 6, and Soulbound also has him at 6, but they're very biased.
To be fair, they
Yeah,
also have Core Havoc at number 1, which I don't believe.
yep.
Soulbound does.
But yeah,
Soulbound's first
you
ever.
are tied for the highest placement of Steel City.
So let me just explain a little bit why. I think that I have never talked to Steel City Warrior. I've only ever really seen their shenanigans and banter, specifically with Elvis. Uh, and although I don't really think that that shows the most positive light on them, I do think that Steel City Warrior is an all around. He seems like it's a great player. I said a little bit on the analyst desk on Sunday. That would be on the 1st of March. The that I think that the way that that team plays, specifically with Soulbound Warrior and Soulbound Warrior, Jesus Christ, Steel City Warrior and Core Havoc, is they just run the show, and it's actually like watching a magician just like do randoms, and it just doesn't. I really don't understand how they do it, but it's like watching a show, and I love it.
Yeah.
Um, I was personally swayed by their shenanigans and banter,
To not put
and
them on.
also to not put them on. I think they monkeyed out a little too hard in banter, and also just like I guess trying to justify their gameplay to how they talk. Um, it was kind of hard for me to put, like I acknowledge them as like decent players. I found it hard to justify putting them on my list. I think as good as they are for like especially Steel City Warrior for essentially filling every role, I'm guessing.
Yeah, he's the reason
From
that
what I've
there's a
seen.
Phil section on the list in general.
I
Him and also
also
Backwood Kid, which
that yeah. I also don't think it's that hard to look good in Friday Division.
yep.
I
So
would agree with you that it is
that's
very.
why they aren't on my list.
Yeah, I just think I just have to rate the amount of proficiency he has shown on multiple different roles, on multiple different champions that are not similar whatsoever,
Yeah.
and shown that skill, and that's why I have him so high.
And I can respect that. Like it takes a lot to play different roles, especially in competitive, like at a good level. So
Yeah.
I can respect that at least.
He's pretty awesome. I really that team is very entertaining. Same with Core Havoc too. I think Core Havoc has the best Bard in the whole division, the whole
The
split.
best Blitzcrank.
The best Blitzcrank too. Yes, of course, of course. For those of you who missed the Blitzcrank game, you should go back and watch it because
You should watch the Righteous Glory Yomu's Blitzcrank.
it was really something. But yeah,
Some dark technology.
I think these two players are the reason that it looks like Soulbound player diffs everyone, because they're just so good. So yeah, I have nothing but good things to say about their gameplay. uh, maybe not out of game. Um, on that trend, let's move to the total list. Number 14 here, Kiwi from Go Next. He's making it. He's slotting in at the fourth bot laner on the list, and yeah, he's number 20 on mine. So the total list has him a lot higher. I believe the total list has him lower than you put him, Justin, and then a lot lower than Darren put him because you've got him at 6. So we've got a pretty good spread here. But either way, he is on the list. We've all got him. So yeah, I think Kiwi is very consistent DPS for Go Next. He's the one backing up Bishan and all of his crazy engages, and Bishan's engages are really good. So he looks very very good on this team.
Yeah, I think Kiwi. Yeah, I think Kiwi does exceptionally well in putting out damage in team fights for Go Next. I think the standout game for me, personally, on top of the fact I think he got a pentakill in his game return this week, Another given that's a stomp,
Yeah.
but I mean it's still pretty impressive.
Yeah, you know.
Was
It's
the
a
game
stomp.
against Snowflakes, the second game? Even though they lost that game, he was playing Bandit, and I felt like that could have gone any way. Like if Kiwi probably could have won V9 that game. Like I'm gonna be completely honest with you. Like he almost did. So I think that like that's what stood out for me. I always thought I saw a very very solid AD carry, and that's why I have him so high on my list.
That Vayne game is why he's so low on my list.
Yikes.
I think his laning is the reason that they lost that game.
That's fair.
because they were
I
put
think I
so
look
far
past the
behind because
laning.
of that. His late game
Like
was
I put,
pretty good, but everyone can play Vayne late game, I think. If you're an AD player, that is.
True.
So, a different take on that game than you do, I guess. But yeah. And then Justin here is aligned with the list for Kiwi.
Yeah, I do think that Go next star player after Bichon, even though I have Bichon relatively lower,
Yeah.
partially just because of my feelings of overall about how that jungle tier list is, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast.
Right.
But I do think that Kiwi is one of the other players that Go Next does play through. I definitely think that he's a force to be reckoned with at times, and ultimately, I think I'm all right for where I'm putting him. I'm pretty happy where I put him.
All right. Sounds good. We touched on Merc. We touched on Forbidden already. So let's go over to the next two Cinder's division team, the division players. The only two remaining from Cinder's division. There are only 4 total. We've got Fancy Italian from Essentia, and we've got Cruiser, a bot laner for Imperial Knights by Genesis. And they're on here for very different reasons, I imagine, but they are the only two from their team in that division. So yeah, they're it's also aligned with my list here. I've got Fancy Italian at number 12, and I've got Cruiser actually higher than that. I've got him at number 9, and I think I actually have him the highest of anyone,
Yeah.
maybe, except for maybe Osnapski. Oh no, I have him higher than Osnapski does. So yeah, I actually have the highest opinion of Cruiser. Actually, interesting. So I guess I'll go first with that. Cruiser, first of all, he is the player with the most pentakills in the season, the entire split. Um, it's in Friday Division, which is obviously the next thing that you could have to say. He's got the most pentakills in Friday Division, but they're still pentakills. He's still doing that, and it feels like a lot of the time he's doing that just by himself on this team, which is really the standout for me. I think if you were going to pick a 1v9 player award, you'd obviously first pick Griffin because
Yep.
he is. It's not just that his team, like the rest of Griffin's team, is not like terrible, but it's just that he's just so significantly better than them that you give it to Griffin first. But second, you have to give it to Cruiser, I think. It's a similar situation where I think Babs is pretty good. Babs is also very inconsistent with the way that he plays his champions and builds them, as I'm sure L60, you've probably heard him say. Luden's Echo, LOL. But I think Cruiser is very, very often the 1v9 player on Imperial Knights, and he's still getting these pentakills. He's still winning these fights for his team, and they're winning games too. It's not like Triple Lift where he's trying to do that and they're losing the game because he can't carry hard enough or whatever. Cruiser actually is winning the games, and again, it's in Friday Division. But Cruiser is still playing good champions, which Triple Lift isn't. I hate that I'm bringing him up again in this episode.
He's being brought up a lot this podcast.
He's just such a meme. You have to talk about him. He's such a spectacle. But Cruiser is
Who is?
also a Triple Lift.
Yeah, triple.
Cruiser is also a spectacle because he is my second recipient. He's my runner-up for the 1v9 award.
I can agree. I've seen. Again, this is probably just from. I did have him on my list, and then I didn't. And this is probably because my sample size wasn't big enough. But I can agree. Like on the 1v9 thing, I think what I have seen of him, he does seem to carry a lot of Imperial Knights on his shoulders.
Yeah.
I feel like partially too is because it's Friday Division.
That's true.
It's not that hard to, I guess, look good, or I guess even with the pentakills, it's hard for me to kind of. It was like really close. It was like a Tinio and then like just over Cruiser. So he's like maybe like 21.25 in my list.
All right. Well, yeah. You have anything to say about Cruiser, L60?
I think you guys have said a lot about how great he's a great 1v9 player, about how he really he is Imperial.
Yep.
I do think that they are one of the weakest playoff bound teams.
I would agree.
we've seen,
Mhm.
but they would be significantly worse without, and that's all you can really.
Mhm.
For sure.
I agree.
He's almost on that same level where you could be like, okay, if you maybe put him in like instead of Hims on SPK Embers, that they would look better because Cruiser is a better AD carrier than Hims, right? But he does more than what Hims does on SPK Embers without the 2 support front line that he has.
True. That's very true.
Omega lol.
Very true. All right. Well, with that, let's bring it over to Fancy Italian. Do we feel the same about Fancy Italian? I know you don't have him on your list, Justin, but
I don't have him on my list at all.
yeah, he's the only representative for Essentia in my list, the total list. Not Darren's list though. He's got yellow. But I would say that he's not a 1v9 player on Essentia. My take of Fancy Italian is very similar to my take of Axum, where they have really really high highs, but they feel pretty coin flippy a lot of the time. But that being said, of a player, if you are winning more games than you're losing, then I think that's still pretty good. For and his highs are very high from Fancy Italian. His Yasuo, he's probably got the best Yasuo in the entire league, which is definitely tough to do. Yasuo is a very 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 tough champion to pilot,
I
and
think
he does it very
I
well.
think there's a better Yasuo in the league, but he hasn't pulled it out yet in PRL, so
Are you
I'm not
talking
allowed to
about?
talk about it.
I know who you're
Yeah,
talking about.
yeah, you know who I'm talking
I
about.
know exactly who it is.
You know what team I'm talking about.
I'm just
But
gonna pretend I know what you guys are talking about.
You could guess, but you wouldn't get it.
I probably wouldn't.
I guess we have to say it now. It's some carry.
yeah,
True. Fair. That's fair.
The jungler sub for Akuma size has actually
He's
the best
actually the
Yasuo.
biggest
Jungle
meme.
Yasuo,
Some
dude.
reason he's just really good at Yasuo.
His Yasuo
The other
is
guy,
crazy.
there's another one in PRL actually that I'm also referencing, but that's fine.
Oh,
But
I thought we were aligned. What's yours?
oh, he hasn't pulled it out in PRL yet, and I don't want to reveal shit. And he's on playoff team.
Okay, fine. Well, some carry is not going to play Yasuo.
Yeah. Some carry will not play Yasuo. He's more likely to play a Mumu than he is Yasuo.
Oh, that hurts.
Playoff strats confirmed.
I definitely do want to talk real quick about Essentia. The reason I don't have any Essentia players is that I'm really confused with what is going on. They have games where they just absolutely shit on opponents, and they have games where they just look like they're not even playing the same game sometimes. And they look super misaligned sometimes. I do think that Yellow's a great player, and I do think that Laxon's a great player, and I do think that sometimes you have Fancy Italian doing great stuff mid, but I have a hard time really understanding what's their real jungle situation because they keep. Me and Goose have talked about this a lot, where you have Striker, right, and then you have J-Web, and you have they are the modern day, if we're likening this to the Impact Ray days of C9, right? They're the spear and then the shield, right? Unfortunately, J-Web is only a shield. He is never a spear, and Striker is a spear, but he can play a little bit defensive, right? And I just don't understand, and I'm not advocating to get him kicked or anything like that. Obviously I don't know all of your internal stuff at all. I can't say like this is like this is the solution I'm giving you, right? But it makes it really hard to make me feel like why isn't Striker just not playing every game?
That's how I feel about Yellow too.
You mean what do you mean? As in like
Yellow versus Demon.
Oh yeah, but Demon's not playing top lane, so that's different.
Demon sometimes plays top lane, but not anymore. They have Diesel now.
Oh yeah, you're right. They do have Diesel.
Yeah.
I forgot that they brought in Diesel.
Yeah, I mean he's only played like 2 games, so.
Yeah, so that's to be fair. I didn't watch actually this Friday because I heard all the games got canceled.
They kind of did, yeah.
Tragic.
Which is tragic.
It was pretty rough.
So, but I do think that Yellow is a fantastic AD player. I think he's probably like. It's hard because I have 6 AD carries on my list.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird because I think that there's 6 ADs in the top 20, but we can get into that later. But the thing is, he's definitely within. He's an argument for a top 5 AD player.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yep.
He's definitely in that conversation.
Just like how Laxton is in my top, can be in my top. And it could be an argument for top 5 supports. But
yeah, I agree. Okay. Well, with that, the only two left on the total list are the Akuma Sides members here. We've got Doctor in the support position, and we got Shaden in the top position, both on the Akuma Sides. And I don't have Doctor on my list.
neither do I.
I do have Shaden.
Oh, I'm the only one who has Doctor on my list then.
In the call, yeah.
Out of us 3, yeah.
Yeah.
I can talk about Shaden, but
yeah.
I want to question why Insecure has Doctor.
Okay, so Doctor, again, playing against him, seeing him these past couple splits, I've always thought he's been a great support. I thought he's been really good with Indigo in the bot lane. I originally had him higher, I think next to Indigo. But then I kind of looked back at the rest of the players I had on my list, and I was like, I don't think Doctor is better than the rest of the supports I have on the list. I think he's still good, but I haven't seen him just like pop off like I did see him last split, and I think that's where a lot of it comes for me.
Yeah.
He pulled out. I don't know if he'd be on my list at all if we didn't face his Pyke again, which we were sadly reminded that he is still a very, very good Pyke player, and I apologize for ever disrespecting the fact that you won't pick Pyke if it's open. So
he will.
Or that we foolishly thought that we could play against his Pyke. But I still think he's a good support, obviously not as good as before, and especially to the current support pool that I have. But I think he's a top 20 player still, personally.
All right. I think that the difference between this split and last split for him is vast enough to where he's not on my list. I think the meta doesn't really suit him all that well. I don't want to see his Yuumi. Yeah. And I think Yumi's the best champion for that role right now, which is a real problem.
Yeah, I think the bigger problem. So I'm not basing it at all on previous splits because I wasn't watching previous splits, so I can't really talk about it too much. But what I really would like to talk about is I think that right now what Doctor provides in lane may have been amazing for the last meta that PRL was in, but right now I feel like champions like Pyke are actually terrible. The champ does nothing comparatively to some, and it's really rough.
Because I seem to remember a certain someone beating you with Pyke yesterday. Interesting.
Interesting.
That's an interesting proposition there, Melstixy.
Oh, but I just think the champ itself is bad, and that there's better that champs you don't need an execute in current meta. There's so much damage going around right now that most champions are not having trouble finishing off champion.
Yeah,
and that's where Pyke's really is strong.
Yes, I agree. The problem with playing Pyke is right now because the champions that are good bot lane are the laning champions and not the scaling champions. Last season, it was the scaling champions that were good, so you would roam to mid. Now, mid roams to you. So you wanna have the lane advantage, and Pyke doesn't do that. So I fully agree, and I think that's why he's not on my list either.
But I definitely think he's in that conversation for top 5 supports.
Yeah, I agree. Shaden though is on my list, and he's on your list too. I know you got him really high, so how about you take this one?
Yeah, so I don't know if anybody's actually run the stats on particularly Shaden, but by numbers alone, he is the top 3. He is number 3 of that top 3 conversation for top 3 top laners in the league right now. Not only that, he plays exceptionally well on strong side, on weak side, and I do definitely can understand that he's not always the most consistent. He does have his ups and downs, like we all do, right? I do think I rate his vaster skill set in competitive very highly, and I do think that he's a great player, he's a great teammate, and he obviously I'm only saying that this is partially coming to as a teammate, right? But he is always willing to give up his pick and his strengths for the betterment of the team.
I think that his chameleon top lane playstyle is very good, and it's very valuable to have on your team. But I wouldn't put him that high on this team because I think you still do need consistency and consistently like carry threat if you are that if you are like that high, like an 8 where you've got him. Like I think when he is on the carry champions, he is the really clutch player, and he can do that in the late game. Like his Mordekaiser in his most recent game was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I think there you also have to like he's on my list as well. So like I appreciate his chameleon like role play kind of style. Um, but it definitely like comes in strides, you know, like or because he's played Soraka multiple times too, so it's very different. Um, they've also had a really shaky split as well, as I'm sure you know. So that also knocks him a little bit, but yeah, I think there's definitely merit to having him on the list, but I think you've got him really high.
Yeah, I mean, the thing though is that I'm still very happy with where I have him, and I do definitely think that as a teammate, I value him a lot, and I understand that it's kind of hard for it's it's hard for players to be able to be like, oh, I would agree with you on this point of view when literally like I'm just basing it off of my experience with seeing him play and then being on a team with.
Yep.
So
I think that also comes into with me my experience of playing against him, which is why I don't have him on my top 20. I didn't think again like all of like your lists are like they're good. Like I can see the argument why these players are in your top 20 list. Just for me personally, I don't think he would have been in this like 15 to 20 pack, and I just didn't. I think the players that I have edged him out just a little bit in terms of how I felt against him
That's
or
fair.
how I felt about him as a player.
Yeah, I mean you and Mouse have very opposite perspectives on him, so
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's really cool. But anyway, we're through with the total top 20. You guys have any closing thoughts on this before I take it to a few questions here?
Insecurity's list sucks. No,
Alright,
but you know
my
whose
list
really does suck.
This okay.
Oh,
Save it.
Snapsky,
Wait,
man.
save it. I was gonna ask
Okay.
that question.
Okay.
Who would you say has the worst list? I know you already said it, but
Yeah, I'll
of
say it
all,
again and I'll explain why.
yeah. Do you agree as well, Darren?
Out of the three of us, I can very well say that my list is probably like the worst. I would probably say Troll, I guess.
Can I just ask why you have Yaji at number 9?
Because I don't think he's that bad.
No, I don't think he's that
I
bad.
think he's good.
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. But do you think he's number 9 and the
Yeah, I
second
think-
best mid in the entire league?
I think he's a very solid mid laner.
Do you think Echidna is a top 4 mid? Well, that's weird because I'm saying because I have him at 2.
Yeah,
you got him at 2.
Echidna is very solid. I like his champion pool. I like his playstyle with Griffin. What he does for the team, I think
I do
Echidna's
too.
good
I
in
do agree
there.
as well.
I think Yaji is also a very good mid laner. I think he holds his lane really well. I think the standout points for him is he has won counter matchups before. So like matchups he should just probably straight lose or like have a hard time in, he wins. Which is like one of the standout things for me. For him, I think he's a very good laner. I think he works very good with Aether.
Yeah.
To their overall team.
Echidna, worth noting, is actually the lowest player when you look at the math page that is on multiple of our lists that didn't make the total list. And partially that's because I don't have him on my list. But yeah, just an interesting stat there. But yeah, on.
I mean, to be fair, we literally have. To be fair, we have players like AE Magnum at number 40. So
right, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're gonna dive into this just a little bit because you know we gotta. You know we
Okay.
gotta. Oh, Snapsky.
What the hell, man?
What the hell, man?
This list is not very good.
What is this list?
Okay. There are a number of things that we can like really just pick apart, and we could extend this episode for like another hour just talking about this list if we wanted to. But the first and foremost thing that everyone is going to notice immediately is that there are no Akuma Katana's members on this list.
I mean, I heard something more outlandish yesterday, but he's doesn't have a list to submit, so.
He kind of does.
Well, he has a shared list,
Yeah.
which is a bit different.
So, I know I said that you can have as much bias as you want in those lists, and I know that this is likely this, and you haven't watched the other divisions. But you got to know this is coming. I'm warning you, buddy. Oh, Snapsky, you're gonna get some heavy flame for this list. I just want to let
Not
you know.
only do I think that it's really far off about what's the actual strength of players in this, of the players that he has on his list, I think that his own team will get first rounded in playoffs.
He does have Akira Ho on the list.
Ah, dude.
Hey,
no,
I mean, hey, man, come on, hey, man, come on,
no.
go next is Bad Boy B-Way at number 8.
Yeah.
Come on.
Okay.
Oof.
Not
you have
only
Appy.
not only is Akira Ho at number 15, Akira Ho is the number 1 top laner on the list too. Food for thought. Anyway, that's gonna
That is
do it from us
definitely
on this episode of the SmaxTalk podcast. Um, thank you for listening into the top 20 episode. It's been a total blast. And yeah, if you also did not send me a list and you would like to be on the math section, I will make a separate one and I will put more on. But for the sake of this episode, I'm going to keep it to just this so that people can, if they're listening to it at a different time and they want to tune in, they won't have it all ruined because of that. So anyway, I'm going to keep it at that. But yeah, that's gonna do it here. Do you guys have any last thoughts or shout outs or things here?
Thank you for having me on the podcast. It was a blast.
Of course, yeah.
Shout out to Monkey.
Shout out to Monkey.
We don't. Oh wait, we do have it on the thing, but
It's there.
Justin changed his profile picture to Monkey just for the podcast.
Just for the
Yeah.
podcast.
Shout outs to Monkey.
And if he
He's a
changes
true
it back,
hero of
yell
our
at him
times.
because I like it better this way.
You like it better this way.
Yep.
I was thinking about changing it to Guy Fieri, kind of can, but
That's pretty good.
you know,
that
I
was.
think Monkey really embodies your Discord presence. So I think you should keep it at this.
Okay, I'll do it. I'll think about it. Think about it.
Anyway, yeah, thank you guys all so much for listening in. If you did make it this far, I really do appreciate it. If you want to catch us when we do release the other episodes, because there will be more, you can hit the subscribe button on YouTube. You can also check us out in our Discord. There will be a link to that in the description as well. Again, there will be a link to the document. If you somehow got this far and didn't know that, it's in the description. So you can check it out there. And as for the rest of this week, I will be releasing 2 more videos for SmaxTalk, one of which will be the power rankings of all of the playoff teams. Once we do get the tiebreakers locked in, we'll have all 12 of them, and I will be power ranking them in a separate video by myself. And then there will also be a regularly scheduled podcast episode with myself, Atinio, and Merc from OT Glacials. So be sure to tune in for that one. That's going to be all about the playoff structure and the playoff teams and our predictions on that as well. So you guys are not going to want to miss that one. Be sure to tune in for those when they do appear on our YouTube. And be sure to tune in to the playoffs as well. That's going to start up on Thursday. I believe that is March. I'm going to cheat and check. March 5th. So you're going to want to tune into that. The 3 of us will likely be on the analyst desk for that too. So throughout that weekend as well. So you're not going to want to miss that either. It's going to be a great time in the Academy League for the playoffs. So I hope to see you all there. And with that, thank you again for watching. And see you next time on the SmaxTalk podcast. Bye-bye.
Peace.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.